Welcome, everybody, to this time of celebration. We're celebrating Chuck Eldred's life. And to get started, let's start with a rousing hymn from Once Upon a Time, O God, our help in ages past. We'll sing all verses. Sounded good. Have a seat. I think we'll start with the piece that our men's choir has put together. Gentlemen, let's get in place. We'll turn to the scripture a little later.
In the quiet, misty morning, when the moon has gone to bed, when the sparrows stop their singing, and the sky is clear and red, when the summer ceases breathing, when the corn is past its prime, carols stop their singing. I'll be homeward bound again.
Our singing was a tribute to Chuck, who we spent many an hour singing together, playing guitar and bass, banjo, and whatever. He was a choir member and just such a strong asset to the church. Now, my brother-in-law had something he did when we were young men that always amazed me. We'd be out in the yard, we were in the country, honeybees all over the place, and he would look very carefully and he would grab a honeybee and hold it in his hand. And it didn't sting him. And he let it go. I said, how did you do that? He said, you want to see it again? I said, yeah. So I looked at that honeybee as closely as I could. He snatched it, held it in his hand. It didn't sting him. And he let it go. He said, you want to try? I said, are you kidding? What is the secret? Maybe some of you know the secret with honeybees. The male doesn't have a stinger. Only the female stings you. Now, there may be a metaphor there, but I'm not going there, ladies. He said there's distinguishing marks, and he tried to convince me of what they were, but for one thing, I didn't trust my brother-in-law to give me the right information. And secondly, I just didn't have the faith. In fact, this morning I was out doing some gardening and there was a honeybee in the clover. I looked right at it and I said, no way. I still don't have the faith to do what he described to me. I still fear the sting too much. And this leads us to our scripture from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. Behold, I give you this mystery. We shall not all die. When the trumpet sounds, we shall all be changed in an instant, in the twinkling of an eye. The dead shall be raised never to die again, and we shall all be changed. What is mortal will be changed into what is immortal. And what will die will be changed instead into what cannot die. And so when this has occurred, and the mortal has been changed into the immortal, then this scripture will come true. Quote, grave, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? Oh, to have the faith that Paul had. But I must confess to you that the picture he paints of the trumpet sounding and all the dead in the last day coming back to life again after being dead hundreds and thousands of years, that, for me, is a challenging belief. And as I look among you, I'll bet if we all sat down and shared what we think of what's going to happen after we die, everybody will have some different opinions. But we still have to ask ourselves, maybe Paul was onto something when he said that death is a mystery. What really does happen to us when we die? Does nothing happen? Does something wonderful happen? Or is it something in between? It gets our thoughts going. However, to a Christian, it is comforting to know that a death is not the end. Because the night before Jesus died, he said to his disciples, "In my Father's house there are many rooms, and I have prepared a place for each of you." That means he's prepared a place for all believers. And that helps to take the sting out, I think, for us who are believers. And that belief, that promise, is a hope that when our life ends, there is another existence that we can't explain, but that God has prepared for us. And of course, Jesus' resurrection is an affirmation of what he told his disciples. It's like an exclamation mark of what happens after death, that God is going to take care of us somehow. To finish the metaphor of the female bee, when she does sting, she loses her stinger. In fact, it removes her intestinal parts, I read, and she dies. That sting kills her. And to finish the bee metaphor, Jesus' death has removed that sting for us as he sacrificed his life, that the fear of death has been removed and the sting has been lessened. Curiously enough, I haven't been stung by a bee in 25 or 30 years until this week. And I was deadheading our butterfly bushes, and apparently bees like butterfly bushes as well as butterflies. I was disturbing their home, or their nectar gathering, and as short as my hair is, one managed to get tangled up in it and didn't like it. And it stung me as I brushed it away. Part of me felt sorry for the bee because I knew she was a goner. But mostly I was irritated that I just got stung after all those years of abstinence. And the good thing, it stung me behind my ear and my head. My head is hard enough that the sting didn't hurt. Hey, careful. Somebody who knows me really well is laughing too hard. The sting happened to start fading away after about 15 or 20 minutes. And you know, that's a comfort also. To know that in time, the sting of a special loss, a grief, that sting will become less and less over time. There's one more thing that is very comforting to us to help take the sting out, and that is sharing memories of our loved one. On the one hand, we feel that sudden pang as we're grieving, when we perhaps are emptying a closet of clothes that are not needed anymore, and we smell that scent of our loved one, and it brings back a flood of memories. And we don't want to get rid of it because it's like losing a memory if we get rid of the clothes. Or the sound of a voice on a voicemail. That we don't want to get rid of that voicemail because we want to hear that voice over and over again. Or maybe we're emptying a drawer that has got too much stuff in it, and as we go through, we see perhaps an anniversary card that our loved one has kept for us to give to us. And again, it brings up that pang of that sting, that sudden pang of loss. But on the other hand, our memories are the things that keep our loved ones close, aren't they? We treasure them in our heart. But memories aren't meant to be kept up, locked up in our hearts. They're meant to be shared. And in the sharing, that also lessens the sting. And that is our segue to our time of sharing. Chuck's children have prepared special memories and slides to go along with them. And if the three of them will come up, then we'll have the beginning of our sharing of memories. And I'll ask you to reflect upon memories that you might have. Chuck wore so many different hats that in a way it's fun to share things that have been so important to us over the years. So anyway, I encourage you to think of something and you'll have a chance to share when they're done.
Hello, everyone. I am Chuck's oldest son, Lloyd. I'm local. I live here in Yorktown. I'm here with my wife, Patty, and our two adult sons, William and Marshall. And I want to introduce our talk and talk about his origins and early career. So Dad was born in Burlington, Vermont, as the middle of three brothers. Both of these pictures, the black and white pictures, show him as the middle blonde son, and the older son is his brother Phil, and the younger son is his brother Wesley. You can see the snowy picture there is a picture of their house, waterfront house on Lake Champlain in Burlington, Vermont. Beautiful place. And in the upper right are pictures of his parents, Horace and Helen Eldred. So he grew up in Burlington. He went to school, got his undergraduate degree at the University of Vermont in Burlington, and then moved to take graduate school at Cornell, where he was in the ROTC, since this was during the Vietnam War. There he met my mother while they were in graduate school together. They got married. He finished his master's degree. My mother did not finish her master's degree. She decided that it was more important to stay with him than to finish his school, which I approve of. And together they moved to Houston, where the Air Force had assigned him to support NASA and the Apollo program. rather than sending him to Vietnam to fight. There in Houston, my brother and I were born, and then 10 or so years after that, after they'd moved back up to Virginia, our sister Laura was born. So in Houston, both parents worked for NASA. This was at the Manned Space Flight Center, later to be renamed the Johnson Space Flight Center, but it was not called that at the time. Dad worked on the Apollo parachutes for the capsule, and my mother worked on human factors on the lunar lander. So the top center picture of the lunar lander, my mother and I are both visible in this, well, we're both in the picture. My mother is barely visible in the middle with a notebook. It's a little hard to see. And I am present in utero to be born a few months after this. So this is summer in Houston while she's pregnant, climbing into the lunar module with a number of spacesuited astronauts. It was a little tight. So 3.5 years later, we land on the moon. Dad took this picture of Walter Cronkite talking about the moon landing on our television at our house, and they plopped me down in front of the television to watch it and be impressed by it at 3.5 years old. Given those two events, watching the moon landing and being involved in the lunar lander before I was even born, my fate was settled. But Dad finished in Houston and moved up to Virginia to work at Langley in about 1970. And he worked on the space shuttle, and he worked on Shuttle 2 and Shuttle C, which were variations on the space shuttle that NASA considered and studied and never actually built, but they were pretty cool concepts. So one of our themes of our presentations today is legacy. All three of his children went to college, went to graduate school, and earned PhDs. I ended up with a PhD in aerospace engineering. I'm working at NASA Langley. I'm doing lunar lander stuff at the moment, just like my father did. I'm a team lead for a structures team there at Langley in the same branch that he was branch head of. My brother got his PhD in aerospace engineering and is a senior scientist at Sandia National Labs in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my sister's took her PhD and is an assistant provost of arts and sciences at Lebanon College, Lebanon State College? Lebanon Valley College. I don't have written notes here. In Pennsylvania. So they'll continue and talk more about other parts of his life here in a moment.
Thanks, Lloyd. So good afternoon. Thanks to everyone for attending this remembrance. It means a lot to us. I'm Mike Eldred. I'm the middle child. And I grew up in Yorktown. I don't remember Houston very much, like Lloyd. I certainly don't remember Walter Cronkite on the TV. But I do remember growing up in this area. Spent a lot of time at Crooks in the youth programs, and have very fond memories of this area. But since 1994, after graduating from University of Michigan, I moved to New Mexico. And worked at Sandia National Labs. I've been there for 32 years now. So I'm joined here by my wife Tammy, who's right here, and my 3 kids, as I understand it, are online watching the streaming video from New Mexico and from California. So, so Lloyd talked about, let me see if I can get this to work. That's the wrong way. No, that's the right way. Okay. So Lloyd talked about Dad's work with the nation's space program and his work at NASA. I'm going to talk, as you can see, a little bit about his hobbies outside of work and his activities, and he had a lot of them. He had a lot of different interests. I hope that he connected with many of the people here through one or more of them. The one that Lloyd already talked a little bit about or alluded to is his interest in music. There was a real passion for him, and he goes back quite a ways. In these pictures, you see again his older brother Phil and younger brother Wesley here in bands when they were not much more than high school age. Later on, there was a lot of other bands, and I'll get to the picture in the bottom right here in just a moment. So many of you are familiar with Dad's roles here at the church in terms of the choir and the worship band, but not too many of you are probably aware of some of this earlier history. So the picture here on the bottom left is actually an LP that one of his groups cut, an LP recording, which we still have at the house, and it's fun to look through, having that kind of artifact from his early days. But most importantly to all of us, again, is this picture here on the bottom right. This is actually how Dad met my mom. So it was through playing the guitar at an event at, I think it was a weekend, just social event at a grad dorm at Cornell. And Dad came and played guitar and caught my mom's eye, and the rest was I guess, history. So we're certainly glad that he used his musical skills to find himself a family. Those events preceded me, but what I remember is growing up with music in our house. Whether it was Mac Davis or John Denver, he was always working at his record player, listening to music, and writing down the chords, trying them out on his guitar, learning the arrangements, so that he could share his favorite music with his friends at church and in other areas. So this included the neighbors in Marlbank through Hootenanny. So there was this, and Laura will talk about this a little bit more in a minute. There's Hootenanny was a social event held by the Marlbank Recreation Association, and everybody got together for music and silly skits. So he was very passionate about that and was an early catalyst for creating that activity. And down here at the bottom, you see some more church-oriented events, including, I think, Jim, I think that's you there in the bottom middle.
I don't know that person.
Playing the banjo, and previous pastor David Hampton. I'm not sure what he's playing there. It might be the bass there. Right here. But within Crooks, my understanding is that the worship band already had a guitar player. But as many bands do, they have too many guitar players and they need a bass player. So Dad volunteered to take up the bass and kind of learned it from not a lot of prior exposure, so that this band could be complete and play live music at the church. So the thing I remember most about his work in music was bringing people together. So if you knew my dad, you probably knew him through church, through this avenue or some other group or club or hobby where he welcomed you in and made you feel at home. This was especially true with the Hootenanny event. Again, we'll talk more about that here in a moment. But in Marlbank at the time, it was a relatively new community. I think they had kind of subdivided the old O'Hara Ranch not too long before. There were new families coming in. They didn't necessarily know each other. And so through this Hootenanny mechanism, he brought people together, community got to know each other, and those bonds within that community have lasted now for decades. And we got to see that as kids growing up, how he brought people into the house, engaged them, and really built something that didn't exist before. Another one of his big passions, if you knew Dad, was sailing. He was, as Lloyd said, he grew up here on Lake Champlain, and in the summertime they were doing, they were doing swimming and kayaking and boating, and in the wintertime they were doing ice skating and even, believe it or not, racing their cars out on the frozen lake. That's what this is a picture of, is some modified car with snow studs racing around on a course. So he took that love of the water and racing and built that into other types of things that are shown here. So while working hard on getting us to the moon and safely back, and later to have reusable access to space, he found ways to stay on the water in Houston, Texas, at NASA Johnson, as Lloyd talked about, and Yorktown, Virginia, here at NASA Langley, through a sequence of sailboats that we remember well. So this orange one here is the Pumpkin Eater, and this white one here is the aptly named Gale Force. And he sailed competitively with the Seaford Yacht Club, and which you can see here on the top pictures, and of course for fun whenever he could get his family out on the water, and teaching, exposing his kids and grandkids to his passion for the water. So some of my personal most enduring memories are from, being on the water with Dad on one of these two boats. And they were both magical moments and at times scary moments. Whether it was getting, stuck in a squall that sprung up and we're getting pushed by the waves into areas that we don't want to be, and we have to deal with all of that. Or seeing fins rise up in the water in front of me in the York River, of all places, the day after I had seen, way too young, the original Jaws movie. They'd taken me out on the water to get me over my fear, and it kind of had the opposite effect. I was quite spooked by that. I don't know if you remember how old I was, Mom. I was probably 10 or something like that. We didn't know Jaws was what it was, I guess. Or on the positive side, flying downwind on the top of a swell in the York River with a full spinnaker and just feeling like we're lighter than air. So getting out and connecting with the outdoors on this scale was a big part of our lives, and I thank Dad for exposing us to that. So after retirement, Mom and Dad bought this contraption. They bought a big Ram diesel truck and a big fifth wheel camper, and they used it to tour the country. And they saw as many national parks as they could. Shown here, Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, Grand Tetons, Glacier Park, Fundy Park up in Canada, and many others. And it was a great opportunity to connect with family and friends that were, for example, out west, like myself, and other friends that had scattered over the countryside. And so they regularly visited with us. This is actually our camper up in Telluride, Colorado, and they visited with us several times. Also with my sister in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and with brothers in Burlington. So that leads me to my final topic of family. And so I'll highlight just briefly this picture here on the bottom left. What you see here is Mom and Dad in the middle, surrounded by Lloyd's family, Laura's family here on the right, and then my extended family here on the left, where Tyler, Zachary, and Caitlin, Tyler and Caitlin have significant others with them as well. So quite a group and quite a legacy for my parents with all their kids and grandkids. So, there's two things that I wanted to highlight about our life with Dad. He was a very active father and grandfather, and importantly for all of us, he set a very important example for us in terms of how to be a parent. And now I need my glasses. So I'd like to say a few words about who Dad was as a parent. So again, speaking from my personal experience, I think it's fair to say that I took the gold medal in terms of testing our parents' boundaries. Not saying that Lloyd and Laura didn't try and have their moments, but it may have just been that I was the best at getting caught. But when I did have these lapses in judgment, I was always astounded at how Dad reacted. He didn't get mad. He let me know that he loved me no matter what, that he expected me to take responsibility and, if needed, make it right, and learn from my mistakes so that I was better prepared next time. So once I was old enough to know better, he trusted me to have the brains and the willpower to figure these things out for myself and make myself a better person without him having to rain down on me. And this was extremely powerful for me because I loved him, I respected him, and I didn't want to disappoint him. So now that I'm a father myself with 3 now grown kids, I realize how important it is to balance expectations and empathy and trust. My dad showed me this, and I continue to aspire to the example that he set. Finally, the second thing that I remember the most was that Dad was what I'll call a gamer. If you asked my dad if he wanted to participate in something new that involved his kids or his grandkids, the answer was always yes, that he was game to give it a go. And he was a part of our lives in a very strong way through that. Whether it was, as shown here, riding bicycles or doing things at the beach and surfing, or doing creative anachronism, or even riding motorcycles with his son and his grandson. He was there and he was engaged. I'll note that if you look carefully at this picture, Dad's bandanas that he wore late in his life just fit in perfectly with the kind of the Harley look here. So he really looks like a tough guy. So I thought, again, he just modeled behavior that we all, now can emulate with our own families. So, which is sometimes a challenge because I'm the conscientious type who pays attention to all these kind of urgent but unimportant things and can get spun up on those things. And his example taught me the value of stepping outside that personal comfort zone and living more in the moment, and taking advantage of the people when they're there. So I'll leave you with, say yes to the opportunity when you can, as we get older, and as we get older while you still can, and experience life in the fullest. That's what he's taught all of us. So thank you.
All right, so hi everyone. If you don't know me, I am Laura Eldred. And like my brothers, I have a doctoral degree, but it is in British and Irish literature for me. So I am the non-engineer black sheep of the family. I'm also the youngest. I was born when Mike and Lloyd were 12 and 9, so the boys were both in college by the time I was 7. So I mostly lacked their positive influence in my life when growing up. And I'm joined today by my husband, Austin, and our 3 children, Helen and Theo and Sebastian, all of whom are either engineers in training or interested in engineering. So I want to speak with you about Dad's community service. He was deeply engaged in the community beyond his work and his hobbies. He was not someone to stand at the sidelines. He found places where his interests intersected with community needs, and he'd get involved. And beyond that, he'd find himself providing direction, getting engaged more deeply, sometimes being pressed into leadership. Dad was engaged with Rotary, the Bargain Box, the Marlbank Recreational Association, the Seaford Yacht Club, and this church in many ways over a long period of years. He was also a leader in many of these organizations, serving as Commodore of the Yacht Club, president of the Bargain Box, president of the MRA, and for a while, chairman of the pool committee at the MRA. But when I think about Dad and the community, I think both about the breadth of his engagement, but really I think about leadership and the kind of leadership that I saw him model. If I take a short detour back to his time at NASA, I remember him debating the pros and cons of moving into management, where he would do less of the day-to-day scientific work that he enjoyed and valued. He was uncertain whether he wanted to do that. Dealing with people and their emotions and motivations is just inherently more messy than dealing with numbers and widgets, even if those are rocket science widgets. People are worse. And I'm not sure if he knew this about himself at the time, but he was a great leader, which led to a range of leadership roles in the community over his years. And when I think about why he was a great leader, what that means to me now, and how I saw it in him, I'll say that he saw and understood the value of relationships, and he had a perhaps inherent ability to listen, to compromise, to keep his sense of humor and never take himself too seriously. And some of these pictures are about that, really. And to be willing to fight when it mattered, and to stop fighting too, when the time was right. One persistent memory of my childhood is all the years that he worked with the MRA Hootenanny, which Mike mentioned. And he would wrangle the community of cats that was that group of Marlbank friends in the 80s and 90s, planning a program, practices, and parties at our house. And I have memories of like drifting through the house, checking out the shenanigans, the friendly debates and ideas and compromises about the program. Some people in a side room singing, some other folks in another room debating the program, a lot of laughing, and all of these semi-opaque red plastic marbled cups that we still have, filled with, I don't know. But it was semi-magical to me. And I looked forward to nothing more than the dress rehearsal night, when all the kids would come watch from their sleeping bags, watching the adults make fools of themselves. And there's a picture here of this hat dance thing that they would do. And I think it was to Randy Newman's Short People song. So they had this great big cardboard hat over their head and shoulders with faces painted on their bellies, and they would like dance and move like the belly was whistling during the whistling part of that song. And you know, my parents, with other folks in the MRA, that many people and that many songs and different numbers and the food orders and the beer keg and the logistics, there was a lot to manage. And they fought to make it happen year after year. And I think that there's something glorious to a kid in seeing adults having fun and just laughing and not taking themselves too seriously. It's an important lesson to learn and a lesson in leadership. Laughter is human. And to see the ridiculous and incongruous or weird and to choose laughter. Choose laughter and joy instead of fear or anger. I think that there's something sacred in that. My father was rarely the loudest voice in the room, unless he was singing a solo, right? But I think introverts have a different kind of leadership that I think can be very successful because it leverages deep listening and compromise. And growing up, when I was watching the news, and I think this is maybe even more true now, but I didn't see myself as a potential leader because many of our models then and now are about being loud, making sure not that you're right, but the other side is wrong. And we have seen people turning compassion into a vice instead of a virtue. And that's not my dad. That's not his kind of leadership. And I think that people saw his value. And kept asking him to help out. And he kept saying yes. And so now all three of us, we're in leadership roles. Who knew that would happen? I certainly didn't. I'm an associate provost at a college, and Mike is senior scientist, and Lloyd is structural analysis team lead. Very cool. And we're all introverts, and we're nerds, and we really love making spreadsheets. I think that's Dad. And we love a deal too, and that's Mom. And none of us are the loudest person in the room. We learned a different style from Dad, about valuing relationships, about listening and compromise, about keeping your sense of humor, and about fighting as long as it makes sense to do so. And as I was drafting this, it occurred to me that this kind of leadership is rather like sailing, which is itself a science and an art. You may have a destination, but you won't get there anytime soon if you just point your boat there. Yelling at the waves isn't going to help you either. You're guiding the boat, but you have to compromise and negotiate with the wind, the waves, the current. And the line is not going to be straight. Those compromises will have you tacking and jibing, taking an indirect route. It takes attentiveness to the elements, a willingness to hold the goal lightly enough that you can see the value of that indirect route and figure out the best way to get to the finish line, having fought the best fight you could. That's being a captain, and that was my father. Thank you.
And thank you three. That was wonderful sharing. You are excused, but you're not, because this is your opportunity to share some stories about Chuck, and I've got a microphone here. I'm going to come to you. Hold on. Miss Shirley, you got something to say? I'm not surprised.
Your words are beautiful. They were outstanding.
Paid for that tonight.
I taught him everything he knows. I can't tell you, and all the things I have to say to you come out of my heart. I still am a member of this church since 1968. My son is here, so I left him with you and Julia, Mark Cooper and Julia, to help you on this journey. I actually belong to two churches. One is the Denby Church of Christ, and the other one is here. And I will never leave you. I want you to know that. And Gail, you're mighty fine. You really are. Your whole family is outstanding. I got the opportunity to meet each and every one of you. And I'm one of those nerds that loved physics because I taught physics at York High School, and I taught algebra at York High School. So you guys that want to be engineers and stuff, okay, that's good. Now, where we start with Gail, my husband, Ned, died in '04, and his funeral was here. And I want to tell you, Ned and Chuck knew each other very well. They both came out of the Air Force. They both were at NASA, and Ned and Chuck did a lot together at NASA. We even went down to a lot of the space flights at Florida and many other places. So the knowing each other for a long time. And Chuck is one of the most remarkable, fantastic, outstandingly great geniuses that I have ever met and ever known. And I put him up there with the best. I don't know what IQ he had. It must have been 200 at least, you know. I'm at 64 down here. But anyway, Gail, I love you so much, honey bunch. I mean that. And we continue. We do things together outside of this church. We're in an art league, and she's doing all kinds of jewelry and everything, and I'm painting pictures. Half of the paintings in this church, I painted them. The Noah's Ark stuff, I painted it. If you go to the family room, you'll see that big, long painting. I painted that. And yeah, I forgot about the butterflies in your, but anyway, I've said a lot because I wanted to. Please forgive me for that. And it's so good to see all of you. And I know they got back there because they're good at this, food. They are so good at food. And believe it or not, when I die, it will be here. I have asked to have my funeral services, and you better not be sad. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And that's all there is to do it with. And I'm aching right now, and that's a long story. But I'm okay. I'm okay. And I love you so much, Jim Powell.
All right.
That's enough.
That's enough, and I like the way you've outfitted your sling to match the occasion.
I broke my arm and
Oh, good work.
yeah, right. Don't you touch me.
I can't hug you. No.
If I don't get up now, I'm going to cheat. So these are little notes I made. So none of mine is intellectual, and I'm an introvert too. So anyway, my memories don't include any NASA stuff or anything like that. I did learn, though, today that I also have been on Lake Champlain, where I served in the U.S. Air Force at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. So I've been to Lake Champlain. And this was, Sea Fever is one of my favorite all-time poems that I had memorized at one time because I just loved it and loved the beach, etc. Anyway, I wore this because I knew Chuck loved sailing, and it was my mother's, and she was a sailor, and so was my dad. But anyway, these are some little funny stories that I've never discussed them with Gail. Okay, so anyway, I always admired Chuck. Every time he had a health issue, he just kept on going. I mean, he just set such a fine example, coming back, always going to those Virginia council meetings and coming back and reporting even after he'd had that big surgery in his head and everything. And then he just kept going. He was singing in the choir. He kept, then he did the bass guitar very recently. During our last music director, he did the bass guitar whenever she asked him. And then back to kudos to Gail, because Chuck's, I called them hats, but someone else said they were bandanas. Well, Gail had made one to match every outfit that he owned. And when my son saw him at a play, I think he was attending a play that we did here at Crooks, they just thought he was the coolest guy. I mean, they didn't think there was anything wrong with his, head. They just thought he was cool because he was wearing bandana. Wow, what a cool, awesome hippie type guy. And then, so I always loved Gail for that. And I mean, Chuck had so many assets, I can't even, they've all been named, but this was another funny thing that I have to just report a little personal story, that when we went on a Sunday school retreat with him to the beach one time, we played this little game where you were supposed to make someone laugh. That was the whole objective. And so I thought, well, I'm going to make Chuck laugh. Well, I tried every trick in the book. He did not crack one smile. And so I lost the game. I think I was out of it if he didn't make the person laugh. So that probably hurt my ego a bit. But anyway, I could not make Chuck laugh. He didn't crack a smile. He just put on that, straight face, and he wasn't laughing. Didn't think I was funny in one bit. So anyway, that's what I have to say. And you guys are an awesome couple. Like you said, like your children said, very humble. And, you just never heard anything from them about all their accomplishments. But just a humble couple, a very loving couple that I admired greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Oh, excellent.
Hello, my name is William. I'm grandfather's Chuck's oldest, so I'm my father's oldest son, and I just graduated with a bachelor's in aerospace, so like my grandfather and like my father, I'm going into the aerospace business, so you can see how the effect kind of trickles down further. Like my father, I'm an Eagle Scout, so again, another trickle of grandfather Chuck's leadership. And I guess one of the hobbies I shared with him in my younger days, I participated in a number of sailing camps through the Seaford Yacht Club, and I've been on Gale Force any number of times, and that was a lovely experience, and I remember my grandfather fondly.
Next, grandson.
I just wanted to state that he always put his strongest face forward. I remember one of the last times I saw him, I gave him a firm handshake, and he was trying his best to be strong and look strong for his family and everyone. He was always humble and there for us.
Perfect, thanks. Okay.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for coming to celebrate Chuck. He has just been such an amazing person in my life as well. I am Tammy Eldred. I'm wife of Mike Eldred and daughter-in-law of Chuck. And my children weren't able to come here. They were here a couple of months ago when Chuck was in the hospital, and they each spent some very, very special time with him, and it meant so much to be here for him. But they are with us today. They are right there in the camera. Hi, guys. But they wanted to share with you as well from New Mexico. I got a couple of text messages that they'd like me to read on their behalf. So we have 3 children. Zachary is our youngest. He's 21 years old now, going to school, working on a computer design, graphic design degree. And this is what Zachary wrote on behalf of his grandfather. The thing that stands out most about my grandpa Chuck is how, despite the distance of my family and our living in New Mexico, Grandpa never failed to put a smile on our faces and welcome us with open, loving arms the second we got to see him. Grandpa was always so engaging with me and my siblings, and specifically, I remember the effort that he would make to show us his favorite activities outdoors. What I can only assume my dad and his siblings grew up doing with Grandpa, Grandpa wanted to share with us. I remember taking the canoes out in Wormley Creek up the Yoke River, just the 2 of us enjoying the peace of the neighborhood down the creek. I remember learning how to dive for the first time at the local neighborhood pool that was just 2 doors up from the house. And I especially remember Grandpa sharing his love of sailing with us and the surreal feeling of the natural wind propelling us into the open water. My point is, Grandpa really cared about us. Even when he was further away, he was always involved in our lives, and he was always so supportive of our dreams and accomplishments. I am incredibly lucky to have such an accomplished, well-rounded, loving, and caring man as my grandpa, and I will miss him dearly. So that was from our youngest. And if you don't mind, I also got another text message from both Caitlin and Tyler. So Tyler is 25 years old, and Caitlin is 28 years old. And they're up there. So Caitlin is the girl on the right corner, and Tyler is in the middle, hugging Grandpa, and Zachary is that little guy sitting in the chair on the top there. So just so you know who you're staring at. And they're also kind of standing to the left of the family, of the big group family there. But anyway, on behalf of Tyler and Caitlin, they wrote this for Grandpa. When we think of Grandpa, we remember his kind smile, warm hugs, and calming presence. He had this patient way of listening, and he never rushed us. As always, he was always interested in what we had to say. No matter how big or how small the milestone, Grandpa was always our biggest cheerleader, celebrating our accomplishments with genuine excitement, and that made us all feel so proud of what we had achieved. One of our favorite memories is lying on the deck of the sailboat in the sun while he sailed down the York River. And Grandpa told us his sailing competitions and described how he learned to sail. And he had this brightness when he talked about the things that he loved, and he never turned down any of the questions that we had for him. Grandpa lived life with so much love, patience, and joy. We will miss him more than words can say, but I feel very, very lucky to have had him as my grandpa. So thank you guys. Thank you from New Mexico for sending these words. Grandpa Chuck was incredibly special. The thing I remembered the most is, we got out here for Christmases and we came out for family reunions and that sort of thing. But the very first thing that we would see when we came off the airplane was Grandpa Chuck, and he was always down low. My kids were little, and he would get down to their level to greet them. And in the middle of the airport, he was down on the floor playing with them and making them feel so comfortable, even after not having seen them in a couple of months or several months. He would immediately get on the floor. He would bring puppets to the airport, whatever he could do to break that ice. And so immediately, my kids were swarming Grandma and Grandpa as we came, in from the airport. They always looked forward to coming and visiting. So, he was just that kind of guy, and I know that you all have seen that in him as well. But anyway, just wanted to share words from our family in New Mexico.
Thank you, Tammy. Very lovely. Okay, I'll come to you. Here you go.
My name is Lauren English. I am also from Burlington, Vermont, and I met Chuck Eldred probably before anyone in this room did, because I met him when he was 11 and I was 7. And I remember him, we all had our friends that we ran around with, and Charlie, we called him Charlie back then. He always went down to our level. He was not snotty to us or anything like that, as the little kids. He was always a gentleman and had his arms around us and stuff like that. And I could walk to his house from my house in about maybe a minute and a half. And it's called Queen City Park. And I was in the Air Force and I was stationed down here at Langley, and my wife Pat was working at the Bargain Box, volunteering. And she came home one day and she said, "Do you know a guy named Chuck Eldred?" I said, "I know Charlie Eldred." But I knew it was the same guy because I knew he had worked at NASA. But anyway, and I went and talked to him. Same guy, same gentleman, and Wesley is more my age, his brother, and a great guy, and he made a difference in the world. And thank you.
That's quite a small world, isn't it? And it certainly speaks volumes when an older child can relate to a younger child and not give them a hard time, isn't it? Anybody else? Well, Jan, if I had known that you love sea fever so much, I would have had you read it. But I saw your bulletin had words all over it, so that's not happening. Chuck and I sailed a number of times together, and my goal was always to bury the rail. I just loved sailing with Chuck because he had that adventure spirit. I must down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And the wheels kick, and the wind song, and the white sail shaking, and a gray mist on the sea's face, and a gray dawn breaking. I must down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call, and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying, and the flung spray, and the blown spume, and the seagulls crying. I must down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and a quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. We're going to conclude with this lovely hymn by Natalie Sleeth, which refers to the mystery of what happens after we die. It's number 707 in your hymnal, and it's called the Hymn of Promise. Why don't you, Kathy, go ahead and play the whole verse so we can get familiar with the... There. Please stand. And now I pray God's blessing on us all as we keep Chuck in our memory and in our hearts, and we have the opportunity to share even further at the gathering that is to take place when we leave this place in the fellowship hall. And so God's blessing on us all, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.